For the longest time, I seldom touched anything horror-related. A lot of it stemmed from childhood fears that branched into adulthood, and it wasn't until a good year or two ago when I actually decided to try out horror for myself. From the really popular, to the silly, to the underrated. But none of them had as much of a lasting impact on me as one of the first horror games I've played, Fear and Hunger. Oh, and mouthwashing too, I guess. Fear and Hunger has a very quick introduction. You can choose from 4 different characters to play as, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, and backstories. But they all share the same goal of needing to find a man in the dungeons named Lagarde. And then the game just kind of throws you in. No tutorial or anything, but I think that's the point. Fear and Hunger sets its ambience pretty well, both gameplay and music-wise, so to interrupt that with an intrusive tutorial feels a little weird. Especially since after starting the game, you have a general idea of what you're supposed to do. In the overworld, you'll be spending your time looting crates, bookshelves, barrels, and whatever you could get your hands on, while at the same time you have these bars to take care of. Body should be self-explanatory. It's your health. Hunger is a bar that'll gradually rise the more hungry you are. If you don't eat, you'll suffer debilitating effects like weakness, slowness, and eventually blindness. And mind is similar to mana or MP in RPGs, but it gradually decreases over time. There's also this really funny feature where interacting with certain things will prompt a coin flip, and you gotta choose between heads or tails. Guessing correctly will reward you. However, if you guess incorrectly, your punishment ranges from being mildly inconvenienced to dying, depending on what you lose it to. This is a fairly controversial feature, and yeah, I can understand, especially on the surface with things like saving. If you save in a bed, most of the time it'll prompt a coin flip, and failing it will summon an enemy in that room. Even when you know you can kill it, it's certainly a drag, especially since the problem can persist even after all the enemies are dead. But my actual annoyances come with the bookshelves, in that failing them just gives you nothing. Look, I just really wish that there was similar to chess where failing gives you a lesser quality book. There are also coin flips in battle, and you know, I actually kinda like these, since most of the time, they're telegraphed, whether the move happens in a certain amount of turns or there's flavor text beforehand, so you can prepare around it and guard to negate it entirely, making battles more in your favor. You know what, let's talk about the battles. Battles are more like puzzles in this game, and it feels nice. Rather than in standard RPGs where there are multiple enemies, there's usually one, but you can select individual limbs you want to target. Limbs have their own sets of moves and abilities too, so it might be better to prioritize taking out one over another. You might think that at first it's optimal to aim for the head to win instantly, but no. Not only do the heads normally have high evasion, but some enemies can still attack despite having their head gone for some reason. Likewise, enemies can also remove limbs from you with spells or weapons, with almost no way of getting them back. Losing legs will decrease your speed, losing arms disables you from holding shields and double-handed weapons, and losing all 4 is basically a game over. There's a good amount of strategy that goes into a lot of the battles, for like your first couple playthroughs. It's really funny how broken this game is, both in the sense of bugs and just how overpowered you can be. Status effects like poison and burn can be stacked, and they can easily melt standard enemies and bosses. If you learn the skill on guard, you gain a move in the overworld which allows you to initiate an extra starting turn where your entire party can attack. There's a magic skill called Black Orb, which is one of the most stupidly broken moves in the game. It does massive damage 3 times to whatever you select, which makes aiming for the head of any enemy almost always a quick way to end fights. You can enchant weapons to make them deal status ailments or critical hits, and combine this with the soulstone accessories you get from killing bosses, and watch in awe as you destroy some of the bosses in this game. That was a final boss. To be fair, it does take a moderate amount of knowledge to get to this point in the game, but it's still kind of funny to me. This game is broken in other ways too. It is not uncommon to find bugs and stuff similar to that. From stupid funny ones like being alive but having 0 HP, or just not all walls being solid so it looks like you could walk on them, to really annoying ones where the game would just crash randomly and I'd lose a lot of progress. But aside from that, I do have genuine issues with Fear and Hunger that aren't just bugs. First, I want to mention torches. On higher difficulties, you don't emit a light yourself and instead need to carry a torch around. The fire dies down after a couple of minutes, and you can only find and make so many without exploits, so if you run out at any point, your vision can be impaired or even removed in certain areas, which sucks, obviously. Secondly, this game is optimized like ass. When you enter the city of Mahabra, there's a fog everywhere and it just tanks the performance. I have an average computer, but I also tested this game on a Steam Deck and it still chugs in frame rate. Thirdly, this game does not allow diagonal movement. This usually isn't a problem with RPG Maker games. However, this game has complex design and collision, so you'll constantly be bumping into walls. And it's at its worst during diagonal and spiral staircases, since they feel really clunky. And finally, this game is really annoying when navigating through menus. Stuff like eating or healing with really important stuff will immediately boot you back to the game, making eating in bulk really cumbersome. It sounds kinda minor, but take into account this. You're low on health and high on hunger, and you gotta satiate it. Now quadruple that, and you're gonna be doing this a lot. There are a lot of smaller issues I have, like there being almost no way to get rid of party members normally without killing them, or the fact that the game has to dismiss a message every time you walk into another zone with someone's fear being too low, or even that the inventory is very disorganized. And I'm well aware that the sequel does fix some of the issues that I have, but that's for another day. Before I go, I do want to talk about the final bosses. Plural. They're kind of a mixed bag, admittedly, but all the endings where they're in are pretty cool. Ending A has you going against the titular god of fear and hunger, where you take this little girl you find in the dungeons to the heart of darkness inside this creepy mouth thing. I really liked the fight. Seeing this girl who I oath to protect with all fibers of my being deform into this giant looming embodiment of, well, it's genuinely nightmare-inducing, but the fight isn't too hard. Finishing the fight ends up killing you, but you usher her into the world and bring about a new era. Ending B is against the god of destruction, who you find by doing the same thing as ending A, just without the girl. Growth is probably my favorite fight in the game. Even with my god build, he was still kicking my ass, causing me to plan strategies and use each character's upsides to their fullest. Defeating him gives you the knowledge of the gods, which results in your death. And finally, there's Ending C, which involves securing the man who you came for, Legard, and taking him to the end of the game, where he betrays the party and sits on the throne in order to ascend as a god. Following him in there and looking for him initiates a fight if you don't kneel to him. And the fight is genuinely a joke. I was able to melt him after one turn. He's such a pushover. Ironically, the fight before him was much more fun and hard. Killing him sends you out of the dungeons, but you gain PTSD for the rest of your life. Likewise, bowing down to him causes to reign over the world for the next few centuries to bring about prosperity, in his own words. Fun. Fear and Hunger is one of those games I think people should definitely give a shot if they could get past the entire wall of content warnings. Because genuinely, this game is really goddamn good. There's a ton of replay value with the variety of characters, strategies, and ways to break the game, and it's all put together in a neat, really messed up, gory package. Also, if you give the girl to the pocket cat, you're sick. And I hate you.